And as I say, I hope there may be others who will soon follow. I was a little bit worried after my talk yesterday at the Reason Rally whether I perhaps went too far. There is a fine balance to be drawn between being too strident and not strident enough. And I'm a little bit worried about whether what I talked about, respect and lack of respect and things like that, went too far. So what I thought I would do is, since it arose in the NBC broadcast this morning, is raise with you the dilemma that I feel in myself. I'm genuinely torn as to what's the right tactic. It's really a matter of political tactics, I think. So I want to share with you the thoughts that are going through my head in my genuine doubt. Yesterday I quoted Johann Hari as saying, "I respect you as a person too much to respect your ridiculous beliefs." And I do want to make this distinction between showing disrespect for individuals and showing disrespect for what they believe. I don't think it's obvious that we should regard a person's, particularly a politician's, private religious beliefs as somehow off limits. There is in this country a culture which is I think, easily confusable with the very laudable separation between church and state. There's a culture that says that a politician, for example, is entitled to private religious beliefs which should not be on the table, which should not be debated, which should not be questioned in public debates. And I think I may be in a minority even in this hall on this question, because it does run very deep in American culture that religion is a private matter which should not be on the table in public debate unless it's actually deliberately put on the table by the believer himself. Suppose we take a voter who is deciding who to vote for, and you look at the publicly stated policies of the candidates that you're offered, and you look at their taxation policy, their military policy, their economic policy, and so on. And all that's public, and that's absolutely accepted, that that's what we should talk about. But suppose you know that privately, it's been made publicly available, but their private belief is something utterly ridiculous. Equivalent to believing that you are Napoleon. Suppose that the person that you're thinking of voting for believes that a 19th century man dug up some golden tablets written in some unknown language, which he was able to translate with the aid of a magic stone in a hat. A 19th century man who, with the aid of the magic stone, translated not into 19th century English, but into 16th century English. What's that about? And you're faced with voting for somebody who, whether or not you like his taxation policy, his monetary policy, his business policy, anything else, believes that story about the magic stone in a top hat. Do you want to entrust your country to a man who is capable of holding a totally ridiculous belief? Or is it private business, nothing to do with us? Is it private and therefore should not be on the table, should not be asked? Suppose his rival for the nomination of his party believes that when a priest blesses a wafer, it literally turns into the body of a first century Jew. literally believe that wine turns into the blood of that same possibly existent individual. Whether or not you support the policies of this candidate, do you want to entrust the governance of your country to somebody who's capable of believing something so absolutely mad, crazy, bonkers? Or is it a private matter that we have no business inquiring into? Now, the most articulate and most praiseworthy expression of this view, that religious views of politicians should be private, was expressed by John F. Kennedy when the fact that he was Catholic was a controversial issue, and he felt it necessary to say that his Catholic beliefs would not influence his policy, and of course they didn't. I want to express skepticism about whether a man as intelligent and well-educated as John F. Kennedy really did believe that a wafer turned into the body of Jesus and that wine turned into the blood. So when I say that belief in transubstantiation is ridiculous, I am not saying that I think John F. Kennedy was ridiculous. I don't think he believed that for one moment. What I am saying is that maybe we shouldn't be quite so reticent about asking people when they say they're Catholic, or when they say they're Mormon, or when they say they're whatever it is, Pentecostalist or whatever. Don't just say, yes, all right, that's private, we won't ask any more questions. Say, oh, you're Catholic, are you? Do you really believe that a wafer turns into the body of Jesus? And my guess is that they'll say, oh, no, of course I don't. But that's what we want to get them to say. We want to get them to admit that actually, although they call themselves Catholic or whatever it is, they really are not Catholic. Because if you commit yourself to being Catholic, then you are committing yourself to a whole lot of beliefs which need to be at very least defended. So I think the doctrine that religious belief should be regarded as private, off limits, off the table, should be challenged. And I'm asking people, don't go along with this convention that it's somehow not polite to talk about somebody's religious beliefs, because religious beliefs are immensely important. Not only do they influence people's moral judgments, as we've seen, but they also constitute a worldview, a view of the universe, a view of the world, which is a relevant and important part of that person's identity. And so I'm asking you, do we really want to leave that as a private matter, never to be questioned? This matter arose in Britain recently when the British branch of the Richard Dawkins Foundation conducted an opinion poll. And we did this because Britain, as you know, does not have a constitutional separation between church and state. The Church of England is an integral part of the governance of Britain. The Queen is the head of the Church of England. There are 26 bishops who sit in Parliament as of right, because they are bishops. You have to go as far as Saudi Arabia, I think, to find another place, or Iran, to find another place where clerics automatically sit in Parliament because they are clerics. In Britain, we have a census every 10 years, and in the 2001 census, 72% of the population ticked the box labelled Christian. That fact has been used in the 10 years since then by politicians and by prelates and preachers and bishops to justify Christian policies in Britain. Britain is a Christian country. 72% tick the Christian box in the census. So when the 2011 census came along, we suspected that the same thing would happen, tried to run a campaign to have the religion question removed from the census, but it wasn't. So we fell back on Plan B, which was to commission an opinion poll by Ipsos Mori, which is a very respected and respectable polling organization, to question those people who tick the Christian box in the very week after the 2011 census to find out what they really believe. And this is what I'm encouraging you to do in this country. When you meet somebody who says they're Catholic or Muslim, whatever it is, ask them what they really believe. We asked the people who tick the Christian box in the census what they really believe. The first interesting fact is that figure of 72% seems to have dropped in the 10 years since 2001 to 54%. That was only the first step in our investigation. We wanted to then take that 54%, the people who tick the Christian box, and ask supplementary questions to say, what does it mean to be Christian? Are you really Christian? Do you go to church? Do you read the Bible? Do you believe Jesus is the Son of God? Why did you tick the Christian box? And the 54% then drops dramatically to a much smaller percentage when you measure any of those indices of what people really are Christian. Perhaps the most amusing of those results is when we ask them, what is the first book of the New Testament? And they didn't even have to remember that it was Matthew. All they had to do was choose a multiple choice of 4. We gave them Matthew, Genesis, Acts of the Apostles, and Psalms. Only 35%, not of the British people, only 35% of the 54 who tick the Christian box could identify Matthew as the first book of the New Testament. Now, of course, it's not important what's the first book of the New Testament, but it does at least suggest a certain disconnect from the Christian culture which they postulate. And the same goes for the answers to all the various other questions that we